Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search. Welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with Fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in today's show, I'm joined by Jeff Parker from Marqueta. Marqueta's modern card issuing platform empowers its customers to create customized and innovative payment cards. Marqueta's modern architecture gives its customers the ability to build flexible payment experiences, accelerating time to market and democratizing access to card issuing technology. Marqueta's open APIs provide instant access to highly scalable, cloud-based payment infrastructure that enables customers to launch and manage their own card programs, issue cards, and authorize and settle payment transactions. Marqueta is headquartered in Oakland, California, and is certified to operate in 39 countries globally. As SVP and Managing Director of International, Jeff is responsible for advancing the company's service offerings in its key markets across Europe and APAC. Jeff has over 20 years' experience in financial services across 4 continents in senior roles at Macquarie Bank, Aussie Fintech OG, OFX, and as CEO of Ant Financial's WorldFirst. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey Dexter, thanks for having me.
Mate, great to have you with us. Bit of a kind of roll call there of some big names in fintech, and of course, I think OFX was my very first fintech that I worked with in 2008, so it always has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it's good to be talking to you. Brings me back to my days in Australia, so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, look, as I mentioned there, I did a little intro on Marqueta, but look, I'd love to do a bit of a deeper dive. Can you tell us a little bit more about the business and what they do?
Sure. As you said, it's a US headquartered fintech, founded back in 2010, and really the premise is it was to kind of simplify the card issuing and processing kind of process. And it was, I guess it really created this new category called modern card issuing. And the premise is it's a B2B platform infrastructure play that allows some of the biggest and best names in tech to really build on top of our technology to provide amazing, innovative kind of customer experiences to their customer base. So we've had some great success. I say we've got some of the biggest names in tech: Uber, Klarna, Afterpay, Zip, all using our platform. And we very much set up as a API first, developer first platform, which serves us really well, and through one single kind of global platform allows companies to integrate once and to launch in it's actually 40 markets now around the world pretty seamlessly.
So it's an amazing business, but it's one of those businesses that is kind of flown under the radar. What I like to call the kind of pipes and plumbing, whereas it's most of the innovation happens in fintech.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think some of the most innovative and exciting players in fintech these days are the kind of the plumbing and the back technology, because it's really that's where a lot of the legacy complexity existed. I found out about Marqueta actually one of an employee that used to work for me at WorldFirst moved to Marqueta 4 or 5 years ago, and I started to follow them through that. And when I decided to move on from WorldFirst, I was looking for a business that was still in the fintech space. I thought was doing super innovative and exciting thing, operating in a big market, and had kind of global aspirations. And Marqueta kind of ticked all of those boxes, and I think what they've done in terms of brand awareness has really been kind of an example to others in the space.
And so your role as managing director of international, what does that actually entail?
Yeah, so I basically run everything outside of the Americas for Marqueta. Being a US headquartered business, that's where kind of the bulk of their revenue and growth has been. But we see a huge opportunity in taking kind of that core product and taking it into new markets. So I'm about primarily moving into new markets, helping us to scale in those new markets, both acquiring new customers that need our capability, but also helping our US customers that want to go international. And then the other piece, I guess, to layer on top of that is understanding the nuances of localization. So while we really want to maintain this single kind of global platform, because that's an advantage, I think where some companies fail when they go global is they try and roll out the same cookie cutter model in different markets. And for Marqeta, it's very much about understanding the local needs of the customer and tailorizing or personalizing that as required in those markets.
Yeah, look, I find that a lot. Probably about 50% of our clients are internationals who are looking to launch here in Oz. And in the first conversation that I have with them, I think they go away and have a real good think about whether Oz is the right market for them. Because there is a lot of nuance. And I think people often look at the map and think, hey, it's a big place, but there's not, there's a lot of competition and there's not a huge market to compete in as well.
Yeah, I mean, you raise an amazing point. I mean, Australia, I think, is a good example of, I think it's often seen as a test bed for some Western countries, companies going international. It's English speaking, it's got a relatively advanced kind of banking and payments infrastructure. But there's also some factors which make it hard. As you said, it's dominated by kind of a small number of banks. Regulation is quite tight. So I think from a Marqeta perspective, we're looking at a whole range of things. It's, what's the total addressable market? What's that competition look like? What's the kind of the incumbents look like? Is there a gap in the market that we think we can solve? And how best are we, or how well placed are we to actually execute? Because while you might have all of those other components, if we don't have the right skills within our organization to actually successfully execute, and that might be experience, it might be language, it might be some underlying cultures that you need to think through. So there's no secret sauce to this stuff. I think it's about common sense and kind of looking at a number of different factors and then and trying to prioritize and kind of hitting the go button and see how you go.
Yeah. So you mentioned some big names there. Now, some of them have found it pretty challenging, particularly the BNPL space has had some headwinds, incredible headwinds this last 12, 18 months. Has that had an impact on kind of the business? And have you had to look at maybe other areas and new markets and new types of businesses that you could offer the service to?
Yeah, I mean, we've got quite a good level of diversification across industry segments. So we own the BNPL channel. We support Afterpay, Affirm, Zip, a bunch of Klarna. So we're very strong there. We're traditionally very strong in kind of the neobank and kind of fintech space. Very strong in expense management, on-demand delivery. We do Instacart and DoorDash. So we've got good diversification. Because we're a B2B player, effectively, we're successful if our customers are successful. And interestingly, BNPL, you're exactly right, has a huge amount of, I think, publicity around it at the moment. But and while I think there are some question marks around the business models and the sustainability of some of those business models, I think what's undisputed is that customers actually like the service which is provided by BNPL. And so the volumes going through that channel are actually still growing. And so from a Marqeta perspective, actually, we're still seeing a lot of volumes through that. But we are working very closely with, I guess, the industry and those players to make sure that we can continue to support them in the right way, and obviously watching the regulatory space with kind of keen interest.
So I don't know if you're planning to go to Money 2020 in Vegas this year, but I'm pretty sure the most heard word at that will be embedded finance. What do you kind of make of that space, and do you think that's a kind of really viable, I guess, opportunity for a business like Marqeta?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so definitely I will be going to May 2020. I was there in October. I'll be going to the Europe one in June, and then again in Vegas in October. Look, I think if you spoke to 100 people in fintech, 90 of them would say that embedded finance is kind of something that's got legs. I think the recent numbers are something like a $7 trillion market. We've just got a new CEO at Marqueta, and he's very clearly and publicly said that embedded finance is a key strategic focus for us. We think there's a huge opportunity to embed seamless payment experiences into the products and services of corporates. So it's definitely a space that we think we can have a meaningful part to play in. So we're very excited about that embedded finance opportunity.
Yeah. So you mentioned their new CEO coming in as well, taking over the reins from the kind of original founder. Maybe it's a good kind of segue and just giving us a little bit of context around the size and scale of Marqueta and the number of transactions that you do and how big you are in terms of people and kind of some of the revenue numbers as well, because it's pretty impressive, like the journey that the business has been on.
Sure. So I mean, I think we're a US listed business, so I have to kind of I'll play according to kind of what's been published, but we're about 1,000 people globally. The bulk of those are in the US. In the kind of the third quarter or last year, which is kind of to the end of September, we processed about $42 billion of transactions, which is just over a 50% increase on the prior year. And in the year to date, the 9 months to that end of September, we processed just under 120 billion kind of dollars of transactions, and a circa again a 50% increase on the prior year. From a revenue perspective, I think we did just over 190 million in the third quarter last year, and just over half a billion in revenue for the kind of 9 months year to date. So continuing to show kind of strong growth around that. The market cap's just over 3 billion. So it really is a super hyper growth success story that is continuing to show product market fit. And we're in a really fortunate position that the customers really enjoy the services that we give them. And one of the biggest challenges we have is providing them with more. They want more from us, and so it's how do we keep up with the pace of what they want. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think it changes a little bit by segment and by market. I think, as I said, it's a unique situation. I've never been at a company where I've spent the first kind of couple of months just meeting lots and lots of clients, and normally in those meetings, often they go to what you could do better and what things have gone wrong, and they use kind of the new kind of headers to kind of voice some complaints. But actually, all the meetings were super, super positive, telling me that they love Marqueta, they love what we stand for, they love the service they get, but they just want us to give them more, which is an amazing kind of foundation to build on. In terms of some of the things, we were the first company in the world that kind of tokenized kind of the issuance of a virtual card into the Apple and the Google Wallet through an app. We've just launched the ability to do that directly from the web. So no longer do you have to download a company's app to then put the card into your wallet. You can do it directly from a browser, which is super cool in terms of reducing some of the friction and the time to do that. We've just launched a really advanced kind of risk decisioning platform based on AI, which is in real time kind of learning around acceptance and decline rates, again, increasing the success rates for customers and reducing fraud. So there's a lot of stuff just in the core that we can do better. But outside of the core, I think what we'll see over the next couple of years is that up until now we've been very much focused on prepaid and debit cards. The credit card is a stagnant product that hasn't really changed for 30 years. A couple of weeks ago, we announced the acquisition of a business called Powell, which is a credit card program manager. So we see a huge opportunity to really show innovation in the credit card space. And then I think we'll move beyond the card rails as well. So in the US, we announced Marqueta for banking last year, where we're starting to provide the issuance of bank accounts and account-to-account type payments. So that, I guess in the theme of embedded finance, corporates that aren't experts in payments or fintech really are increasingly looking for this kind of one-stop shop that provide them with all of their needs in one location. So we're definitely looking to broaden, I guess, the sectors that we play in.
And in terms of the kind of sectors, where are you seeing that there's kind of maybe there's a demand for this? Because one of the things that I'm probably in the 10% who's a little wary of embedded finance. And it's really, I think, stems from, we were talking earlier about 2009 and the GFC, and seen a similar kind of push back then, but at the time it was typically white label platforms and products and partnerships between Woolies and HSBC, and they never delivered what they were kind of set out to deliver. I absolutely get, technology now has changed quite dramatically, and so a lot of those challenges now will probably not be as prevalent. But do you still see that the kind of the Coles and the Woolies and the Tesco's of this world are going to go and down the embedded finance route, or do you think they'll kind of stick and try and do their own thing?
I mean, when we look at embedded finance, it's more in adding the payment experience or embedding that payment experience into everyday kind of use cases that you see. So, I mean, the first of some of those things was the buy now, pay later. So, what we do in real time when a customer goes to a checkout is we're issuing a virtual credit card in real time on behalf of Klarna so that they can seamlessly make that transaction within the experience of the retailer. If you look at where that's going in the future, the automobile industry, for example, I think is ripe for embedding payment experience within the car, so where you can go and pay for fuel immediately through your in-car app, or you can order music from your screen, or you can pay for your car insurance within your car. I've got a friend who's just launched a business called Stored, which is trying to link the physical and the digital retail experience, and so that you can see something online, save it to your basket, and then you can walk into the store and you can take that link and automatically issue a card to purchase in store. So I think if you look at those types of use cases where it really is just taking the 2 or 3 steps out of the journey of having to open an app and potentially risk the transaction success dropping off, I think it's definitely got huge applications there. I think to your point, those traditional partnerships with supermarkets, and I don't see as much value in what that brings for customers. And I think that they're the types of things. It's evolution, not revolution, in some ways. Like to your point, we're not creating completely new experience. We're just making it easier for customers. And some of the stats around transaction drop-off rate. When I was at my previous role, and we were very much supporting marketplaces, many marketplaces would have a kind of north of a 50% drop-off rate from someone who clicked buy on a basket on an online, and then if they weren't able to pay with a card because it was more of a B2B transaction and they had to go and transfer the money from their own account, more than 50% of people would not go on and complete that transaction. So it's a frustration for the customer, it's a frustration for the business. So I think there's huge efficiencies and optimizations to be made through the thoughtful use of embedded finance.
Well, coming up to a wrap, Jeff, but before we do, one of the cool things about doing this podcast now for 3 years is I get lots of feedback from people who've mentioned an episode that's inspired them to start a business, or has inspired them to move into fintech, or they loved the business and they reached out to the founder and they actually hired them. So the kind of the power of podcasts is something that I've come to kind of experience firsthand is a real thing. So what I'm doing this year is every guest that we have on is asking them which podcasts they listen to, where they go for inspiration. Ideally one fintech and one that's anything else that you're listening to that you'd like to share with our guests.
Well, good question. So there's a couple. I listen to quite a lot of podcasts. I cycle a lot and often listen to them when I'm cycling. But on the fintech ones, one of the obvious ones I think is probably one of the biggest ones is Fintech Insider, the 11FS one. I really like. But I also listen to Fintech Daydreaming, which is a much smaller one out of the Nordics. And actually, I quite like Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. I listen to every now and then. They're probably my go-to ones. There's a few others, but I think they're probably the key ones.
Well, Jeff, it's been fantastic to catch up with you. Before we finish, what else can we expect from Marqueta in 2023?
I think as I kind of touched on, diving a lot deeper into credit and expanding into the credit space overseas. continuing to look at new market expansion, already covering kind of 40 countries, and taking a lot of what we do in the US into new markets, and really deepening that product service. And I think ultimately not forgetting what our kind of bread and butter is. And, we think we're that kind of core leader in issuer processing, and we'll continue to do that to the best of our abilities to meet and exceed our customers' expectation and needs. But super, super exciting future from our perspective, from Marqueta. So, and thanks very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.